I think we all know that in life there are different seasons. There are some seasons where you have a lot of freedom and you're able to do a lot, and there are other seasons, like parenthood, where you don't quite have that same freedom and flexibility. Obviously, becoming a parent will have an impact on your friendships for this reason. However, adoptive parenting just adds another layer into how your friendships can be impacted. So today I'm going to share 3 ways that your friendships will change when you adopt. Hey there, my name is Katie. If you're new here, welcome, and if you're not new here, you might be kind of noticing that things have changed a little bit on my channel. So ever since my channel started, I went by La Casa de Katie, and now I have officially changed it to Adopt Informed with Katie. I am an adoption consultant and my website is called Adopt Informed and my business, and I just thought since I typically do a lot of adoption content on here, I might as well change the name to make it the same across all of the platforms. Don't worry, I still plan on sharing things outside of the adoption realm as well, like bonus videos of some of our travel vlogs or family vlogs, week in the life type of things. Those things aren't going away, it's literally just a name change. So thank you for sticking around for that. So this is my second video in a series all about how adoption can impact your life as an adoptive parent. I call it Adopt Informed for a reason because I want you to be completely informed about how your life will change after you adopt a child. And in my mind, the worst thing that could happen is that you're just not prepared at all and you just imagine it's going to be super easy and super wonderful the whole time. And the truth is there are some difficult parts about this process. And not just the process of getting there, but actually once you're already there, your kid's in your home and you realize, wow, my life has changed a lot. Last week we talked about how adoption can impact your marriage, and this week we're going to talk about how adoption will impact your friendships. So the number one way that your friendships will be affected by adoption is that your priorities will most likely change during this time. Just being a parent in general involves a lot of time and attention you have to give to your child, but I would argue that adoptive parenting, or maybe you could even say special needs parenting, takes it to a whole other level. And because of this, you are going to have less time to spend with your friends. It may not be as easy for you to hang out with your friends one night during the week. It may not be as easy for you to attend a social event. And oftentimes, even if you can go, you may find that you have to leave early or you're arriving late because you're getting kids settled with a babysitter or, there's so many reasons why it can happen. And obviously, I think this goes with parenting in general, but when you have a kid who's adopted who might have extra therapy they need to go to, you might still be in that fostering phase before you adopt, and so you may have social workers visiting a lot. I know that when we were walking through that time period, it was often very hard for us to do much socially because our calendar just felt completely booked and completely overwhelmed. And it can take a while to get into a rhythm where you feel like you can really balance friendships and your parenthood and all of those added responsibilities. And this can impact your friendships because sometimes your friends may feel hurt. They may feel hurt that you missed out on an event or that you had to maybe change a date of an event because you have a family that is your first priority right now. And if your friend doesn't have any children or maybe has biological children, there can be some differences and priorities they might not understand just because adoptive parenting looks a little different. The second way your friendships could change is that it's very likely that you will make some new friends through this process. As you go through your training sessions to do foster care adoption, you're going to meet other families who are pursuing that same route. And so you may find that as you take these classes with these people, you get to talk to them, and it's just nice to have someone else who's walking down that same path as you are. And so you can begin to develop a relationship. These friendships can be such a good source of support and understanding because they truly get what you have been through. And if they're more experienced adoptive parents than you, they may have a lot of advice and tips that you never would have thought of on your own. You can learn a little bit from their experience. I am so thankful for a few women from our old church who were also adoptive parents. And even though I think now all of us go to different churches, we still keep in contact. And I would say a couple times a year at least, we all try to get together and go out to eat or go to someone's house and just talk. And those have been, I will say, like the most therapeutic friendship hangouts that I have had since we adopted. It's just so nice to hear other people explain what they're struggling with and you realizing, oh my gosh, I'm not the only one feeling this way, because there's just a lot going on as an adoptive parent. You have attachment to worry about. You have, difficulties that your kids may be having emotionally that you're trying to help them work through. And sometimes other people just don't fully understand, to no fault of their own. They just haven't been through this process before. A big reason why you may gravitate towards some new friends is because some of your other friends just really don't fully understand what you're going through, and that's not their fault at all. It's just that they haven't walked this path before. And you might actually find that you struggle to relate to your friends that have biological kids, even though you both have kids. And that's actually my third point, is that your friends who have biological children may not really understand you. I expected to feel closer maybe, or to understand some of my friends who actually had biological children more, because I went from not having kids at all to adopting kids. And so I'm thinking, well, they're parents too, they'll understand. But it's really interesting because I have found, in my experience, as well-meaning as these friends can be, that oftentimes they're the ones who understand the least in terms of how I feel, because their only experience parenting is parenting a child who was born to them, where they had that kind of instant bond and instant attachment. They don't quite understand the struggles of attachment. And there are times where maybe they'll say things in a well-meaning way, like, oh, I think every kid does that, when you're explaining one of your kid's trauma behaviors. And, it's like, it's coming from a well-meaning place, but it's actually not helpful. And it's coming from people whose kids just don't have the same struggles that your kids do. And so it's hard for them to fully grasp that. And it's really hard for them to fully grasp some of the feelings you may be having and struggling to bond or struggling to attach, because they've never had to go through that. And then as a parent, the comparison game gets really real when you're like, why don't I feel that way about my kids? Why don't I have that natural relationship? And it's like, well, duh, you don't. Like, it's not this really natural thing we're doing. It does take work, and it takes effort, and it takes time in building a relationship to have the same attachment that a biological parent would have with their child. So it can be a little more difficult to relate to those parents than you may expect. I have actually found that my friends who were single or who didn't have children at all were more likely to empathize and understand what I was going through. Maybe not fully understand, but to be really empathetic, because they didn't have their own framework for what they thought parenting should look like and what they thought a mother-child bond should look like and all of those things. So that was really something that surprised me about friendships. I think it's really important to communicate with your friends and educate them about adoption and attachment and bonding and trauma and all of those things that go along with adoptive parenting, and just being really clear with them that you would appreciate their support and that there might be times where they don't fully understand where you're coming from, and that's okay. You get that because they haven't walked this path before. Because oftentimes just educating your friends and family about adoption and what it looks like, that can actually open their eyes and they can become super supportive. I was super thankful because we had a friend who had already adopted before we had, and she actually volunteered to come into our small group from church and teach them about trauma and adoptive parenting and ways to have boundaries with kids versus not, ways to act and not act with them. And that was so helpful because it was coming from someone who truly understood it. And it was so great because our friends who were there, I felt like they really had a basis of understanding what we were going through. Even though they didn't fully get it, I felt like they were very sensitive to the way they acted around our kids and things they said and having boundaries, and I was just really appreciative of that. So those things can make a huge difference. If you have a really close friend, you say, hey, I know that this is going to be really hard for me and I really value your support. Would you be interested in reading this book I read? Because I really feel like you could be such a good support to our family in this time. Oftentimes your friend's going to say yes because they care about you and they love you. And then they're starting off with a little bit of foundation so that you don't feel like you're on completely different planets. So those are 3 ways that your friendships can be impacted by becoming an adoptive parent. And like I said, it doesn't all have to be negative or bad. You could make new friends through this experience. And there are plenty of ways to prepare your friends to have an understanding of what your life is going to be like once that child is home with you. I think it's super important that you make your friends really aware that you care about them and that you value time with them by intentionally setting aside, even if it's once a month or every other month, that you do something together. Having that clear communication can really help a lot, setting aside time so that they know you still care for them. There are plenty of things we can do to make sure our friendships last throughout this adoption process. And having a support system is so important with adoption. I'd say especially in that first 6 months of parenting, you just need a lot of support, and you need to be able to rely on people sometimes for emotional support, just a listening ear, maybe to help come hang out with your kids so you can take a really quick break. Anything like that is a huge help. If you want to see if you are ready to adopt, whether that means your marriage is ready, like we talked about last week, or if your friendships and your support system are in place for you to adopt, definitely download the quiz I have. It's a free quiz, and there's a link in the description box below. And this quiz is all about letting you know if you're really ready to adopt or not. Also, in 2 weeks, I'm making a really big announcement about adoption consultations. There'll be a whole new package available for you as you prepare for your adoption journey. So you'll definitely get some updates about that as well coming up. If you don't want to miss out on these next 2 videos about how adoption can impact your life, definitely subscribe. And I always appreciate when you give the video a like if you enjoyed it or if it helped you in some way. So download that quiz to see if you are ready for adoption. And I hope you have an awesome week, and I will see you next time.